Hello, this is Robbie Mitchell here from Head in the Cloud Development. Today I'm going to talk you through custom plugin scripts in NetSuite. I think I've always known that custom plugin types existed, but until recently it had been a very mysterious topic to me that I thought never really had a good use case for. So today I'm hoping to make it clear to you what this script type is meant for with a relatively simple example scenario. This video is being recorded in July 2023 on NetSuite version 2023.1. So what are custom plugin scripts? Well, let's take a look at the custom plugin overview page in NetSuite Help to find out. It says here, a custom plugin script is customizable functionality that is defined by an interface. When an interface is defined, third-party solution providers can develop custom plugin implementations and bundle them as part of a SuiteApp. After the SuiteApp is installed within an account, a solution implementer can define one or more alternative implementations. These implementations allow the solution implementer to customize the custom plugin's logic to suit business-specific needs. So in other words, if we have a SuiteApp, we can publish some default functionality, but allow our users to override or add on to that functionality with alternate implementations. And if you look, there is actually a lot of information on them here, but I find it a little difficult to make sense out of all this without seeing an example. So I've come up with an example for you here. It's a scenario we have in real life, and I think it demonstrates the usefulness of the custom plugin script type. Let me explain. Let's talk about the pharmaceutical industry. In order to legally buy and sell restricted drugs, the entities you're transacting with must have valid licenses from various authorities. For example, a license might be from the state or from the DEA itself. As you might expect, different states have different licensing requirements. So we have a SuiteApp, and one thing it does is that it validates transactions to ensure that the proper licenses are in place. And if not, our script needs to block the transaction from being saved in NetSuite. To facilitate this, we have a pretty simple custom record that represents the license. It lists the entity, the authorized control types, DEA schedules, addresses associated, and license numbers, along with expiration dates. The challenge we're going to solve with the plugin script is the logic for doing the validation around these. My initial plugin script will have some basic validation built in, but will give users the ability to layer on their own localization-specific validation on top of ours. Sound like a good challenge? Yeah, I thought so. So today in this demo, we'll be coding in TypeScript and uploading to NetSuite using both the SDF plugin for WebStorm and the HITC uploader. If you're not familiar with the HITC uploader, it's a free bundle that anyone can install. If you want to learn more about it, I'd recommend starting with one of my other YouTube videos. I have tutorials here in Windows and Mac on both WebStorm and VS Code. So there's no excuse not to know how to use it nowadays. Okay, let's get into it. First, let's look at what our goal is again. I'm going to bring up a sales order. So this sales order has 2 drugs on it. And if I scroll to the right a bit, I see that one of the drugs is a controlled pharmaceutical drug that requires licenses. So the starting point of what I'm going to walk you through is that I've already set up the plugin script for sales order validation. I'm going to walk you through the steps that we have for that. And then after we go through the sales order example, we're going to do the same thing from scratch for purchase order validation. So you can see the steps in more detail. So before we go through the steps ourselves, let me give you a quick summary of what this validation looks like in our SuiteApp for sales orders. Step 1 is to create the custom plugin type script definition. So this is the XML file that represents our sales order plugin script type. Here's how we define the method that we can allow users to override. Step 2 is then to create the script file that has the code for this. This script has the default implementation of each method that we listed in our XML file. I've only included very basic validation here. The idea is that users can add on their own more sophisticated validation. Step 3 is that in any script that we want to use this plugin, we need to add a reference. So for example, in sales order user event, we have the custom plugin types section down here at the bottom. Step 4 is to call the plugin script. So in my sales order user event script code, this is how we do it. First we find the plugin implementations. Then we iterate through them, calling the function for each validation plugin. Finally, step 5 would be that some user could then add in their own validation function on top of ours. So let's switch modes here, and let's say I'm a user and I've got my own code repository. So here I've created a sales order T3 validation script. You can see the script type here is plugin type implementation. And this is just an example where if the description says block me, then we throw an error to prevent the transaction saving. So let's test this to see it in action. So before I save this, let's take a look and see how the plugin implementation looks. So if we go to Customization, Plugins, Plugin Implementations, now I always find this interface to be a little bit buggy, but you might have to switch the type here to Plugin Type Implementation. And here's our test sales order validation. So something looks weird here where my type is blank, so I might just recreate this so I can show you effectively. So to create this implementation, once the script file is uploaded, we'll just enter in sales order T3 validation. And here we have to select which plugin type we want to implement. So we'll select sales order implementation. Put the script name back in. And I think I'm going to leave it on testing. That's fine for now. Okay, so now if I save my sales order with the description as block me, there we go. It says our validation has failed with an illegal item. And if I check my sales order user event script log, I can see that it ran both our custom script plugin and the default validation. So that's how it currently works for sales orders. Now let's do the same for purchase orders a bit more slowly. I'm going to go back to my SuiteApp here. And again, step 1 is to create the XML for the license file definition. So if I right-click on my scripts folder, I can do New Custom Object. And here we can actually select Plugin Custom Plugin Type. We'll set the ID to HITC T3 Validate PO Plugin. So let's set the script name to HITC T3 Purchase Order Validation Plugin. For the script file, I'm going to copy and paste the file name from the other file because it's so long. Just change it to PO validation. Well, let's go ahead and set the status to released. And then we need to define the methods. So we'll create a methods object with a method inside it. And in that method, we have a method name, which is again the method. Let's call it validate purchase order. And then we can set a description. I'm just going to say this performs purchase order license validation. Okay, so next we need to create the script file. Do new type script file. And we'll set up our block header comment first. I always like to put the script name here. Copy the script name from here to make sure to get it right. Script type is plugin type implementation. API version is 2.1. And the method we need is this one that we've defined here. So I'm going to say export function that. And let's talk about what we actually want to do with this validation file. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with the details of pharmaceutical license validation. Instead, let's do something really simple, like let's require that the purchase order has a memo on it. So to do this, we need to pass in the record object into our function, which means that we need to import the record module. Then we can say that we have the purchase order. And the way we can do this is we can return a Boolean value so that our main purchase order user event script knows whether or not this validation has passed. That means we'll return true if everything does pass. Otherwise, we'll read the memo here. We can do some logging as well. That way we can see whether or not it had a memo. And then if there's no memo, we'll return false. And this is telling us that we could simplify this if statement to make it shorter, but I think it's actually more logically clear if we break it out. So let me just move this log down here to make the compiler happy. Okay, so now we need to implement this plugin in our purchase order user event script. So first let's edit the XML definition of our purchase order user event script. We'll add the custom plugin types section down here. We'll add a plugin type, and then the script ID is custom script hitc validate PO plugin. Next, we'll implement it in our purchase order user event script. So the first thing we need to do here is import the plugin module. And then the way we implement it is, first we'll call the plugin.findImplementations method, and we're going to do this in the create or edit context of before submit. And I'm just going to comment out my old T3 validation for now. So this is how we'll get the implementations. Plugin.findImplementations. Type is custom script hitc T3 validate PO plugin. Because remember, the idea here is that users will add their own validation methods. And in reality, there's probably just going to be one. But it is actually possible that they could implement many validation functions. So we'll address that here. We can use a for loop to go through the implementations that we found. We can add some logging here to help make it more clear what we're doing. And then let's log each one that we're calling along the way. And now we need to load each validation implementation method. Once we've loaded the method, we can then run that method. Passing in the purchase order. And we know that this method will return a Boolean, so I can say as Boolean. It'll be important to document the inputs to the function and the return method so that users know how to implement their own methods here. So now we know whether or not our validation has passed, and if it hasn't passed, then this is where we'll throw an error to block the purchase order from saving. We'll say regulatory license validation failed. Okay, so now let's upload and test what we have before moving on to the next step. I'll compile my code and upload it. Oh, apparently my description is a little bit too long. It says it can only be 30 characters, so let's just say performs license validation. How many characters is this? 28. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so that worked. So now to test it, I'm going to edit a purchase order. So this purchase order has a controlled drug on it. And to do a basic test, let's just remove this memo and see if it saves properly. Looks like I have a typo in my function. I didn't capitalize the O. Let's fix that quickly. That's going to be in my purchase order user event. Okay, I fixed my second typo there now. Sorry about that. Deploy this. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to delete the memo. Click Save on my purchase order. Okay, there we go. Now we got the PO validation failure error. That's what we wanted. And if I add the memo back in, it should save correctly. There we go. Okay, so now for the final step, let's pretend we're an end user who wants to implement a custom validation on top of our built-in one. I'm going to go back to my other repository. I'm going to create a new script here. I'm going to call it Purchase Order License Validation. And here the script type needs to be plugin type implementation again. And the API version is 2.1. And from the module documentation we talked about, we'll know that the method we need to export is validate purchase order, and that it takes in a PO record parameter and returns a Boolean value like this. And of course, let's import the log and record modules. Now for this demo, let's just say we want to validate that at least 2 licenses have been set in the custom field on our purchase order. So I'll say const licenses equals po.getValue. It's cust body t3 tran licenses. And this is a multi-select, so it comes through as a string array. Let's add a log. And then let's return whether or not we have at least 2 licenses. Okay, I'm going to upload this using the HITC uploader to HITC SDF QA. So now this is where we need to go implement the script. So go to Customizations, Plugins, Plugin Implementations, New, type in our script name here. And since we've uploaded our project, we'll have this T3 purchase order validation plugin to select. I'll just set the name to Robbie T3 purchase order validation. We'll leave it in testing, that's fine. I'm going to click save. And now I'm going to edit this purchase order. Before I do, let's just look. So I have 1 license in my license IDs field here. So this should fail in our validation. So if I just save this purchase order now, we get PO license validation failed. And if I check my script execution log, we'll see that we were running our custom validation and that we only found 1 license, ID 3, and that's why our validation failed. So that is working exactly as we want. And that's it. This concludes our tutorial on custom plugin types. Please get in touch if you have any questions or feedback. Otherwise, we'll see you at SuiteWorld. Thanks for watching.